Well, good afternoon. It's Honest Jim again, honestly. I've moved outside today. I looked at the temperature. It's June 20th, 2024, at 4 in the afternoon here in Thailand, and the temperature is 101. I talked about the heat factor in one of my last videos, so I won't go over it today, but it seems to be like this all the time, which I really don't understand. Uh, what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to follow up on my comments about Magic Johnson and myself at the Maui tournament. I never did really get a chance to finish that. I'm going to talk to you about how I got into that tournament, uh, which is kind of clever. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got this house built. And tomorrow, I'm going to go on a walking tour and show you the house and the neighborhood with the handheld unit, which will be my first time with it, and it's got a bevel, so it moves back and forth while I'm walking. It kind of shows my face some of the time. So we'll try that out tomorrow and see how it goes. Anyway, back to the Maui tournament. Um, about 4 years before the Maui tournament started, I was living in Kailua Kona, Hawaii, and my good friend Don Bean, who God bless him has passed away recently, uh, had a company in Maui called DB Sounds. DB Sounds did all the setup for the sounds for all the concerts. He was a DJ at the Banana Moon, which some of you may have stayed there. I went there a few times. He's got a great story about Sylvester Stallone. I think he and a couple of the other movie stars, maybe Bruce Willis, owned an interest in the Banana Moon, which is a uh, uh, rockin' place when Don worked there. But I can't tell you those stories. I'd get in trouble. So anyway, Don called me one day and he said, "Hey, the Maui tournament's coming over. We got North Carolina coming. We got Michigan. We got all the great teams. And this tournament was a great way for the Duke, North Carolina, Michigan, UCLA, the big time teams, the big time squads, could use as a recruiting tool. They'd bring in the guys out of high school and go, "Hey, come here. We're gonna go to the Maui tournament. We're gonna be in Maui, Hawaii." Most of those guys have never been there, and they thought, "Gee, that sounds really good." And the other teams couldn't give them that option. So it was big time. And Chaminade was a small school in Hawaii. They had to have a sponsor, and Chaminade was a sponsor. And one year, Ralph Sampson, who was 7'4" and made the All-Star teams playing, I think it was for Houston in the NBA, brought in his team, and he was supposed to win the tournament. The first game, the first day, Chaminade beat him and eliminated him, and that was huge news all over the country, and great news for Hawaii. But moving along, Don Bean called me and said, "Why don't you come to the Maui tournament?" And I was a basketball aficionado. I love basketball. And I said, "Gee, I'd love to, Don, but I don't know how I'm going to get in there." He says, "I got a way for you." I said, "Well, what's that, Don?" Now, the Maui tournament was at the Maui High School. So there's maybe, 2,000, 2,500 seats if you jam them all in there, plus the teams, plus the players, plus ESPN, plus, plus, plus. So Don said, they set up a chain link fence around the back of the, excuse me, around the back of the gym, and we're all outside doing the ESPN stuff, setting up the music and setting up the noise and setting up the sounds, and I'm out here. I'm not inside. I said, "Okay." He says, "Why don't you come about 9 o'clock in the morning, about an hour before the teams show up, and give me the high sign through the fence, and I'll come over. I've got a lanyard and a plastic pass with my picture on it, and I'll throw it over the fence for you." Now this was like a manna from heaven. I can go to the Maui tournament in Maui, and Don's going to give me his pass. And then he said, "There's one proviso, one condition. You have to stay for the entire series of games. You can't leave during the games. Now they finish at about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So I, who is am a basketball freak, had to stay from about 9:30 until 9:30 at night and see Jerry West and Magic Johnson and all the great teams. And gee, how would I possibly be able to do that? Well, I could. So I did it. I flew over to Maui. I got the pass. He threw it over the fence. The pictures weren't the same, but the guy at the door didn't even look. He just said, "Oh yeah, he's going in." And that's when I sat up there in the the stands, the high school stands, the benches. And Magic Johnson came up and sat next to me because Michigan State was going to play, and he was from Michigan State. Um, the one great story I have, where Magic and I actually had a conversation, was the players were out warming up on the court, and they're right in front of you. I mean, you can't get a better seat. And they're shooting around, and they're in their uniforms and stuff. And here comes Dean Smith, the basketball coach of all time, other than John Wooden of UCLA. He comes walking along with his team. He's getting ready for the next game. And he made quite an entrance. He had 12 players, you can have 12 players, walking in front of him right along the sideline of the court because it's so tight. There's no room in this place. And they're walking along the sideline of the court on the far side of us. 12 players in North Carolina uniforms, and these guys looked like an NBA team. They're all like 6'5", 7 foot, 6'10", big, And Dean Smith was walking behind them as they went into the door that leads to the locker room. And behind Dean Smith was 2 7-footers in suits and ties. Young guys, high school or college guys. And I just was watching this parade, and I looked over at Magic Johnson, and Magic was looking too. He was watching this. And I smiled at him, and he smiled at me, because we both knew what the hell was going on here. And finally, Magic said to me, "What's wrong with Dean Smith? He can't have 12 great players. He's got to bag 2 guys and stash them so other schools don't get them." And that was exactly what I was thinking. And we laughed, and that was the end of our conversation. I think I mentioned in my last video that when I went home from a Magic Johnson tournament, I was really excited, and my friend Tom picked me up at the airport in Kona on the morning of Thanksgiving, because the tournament ended the night before with the winner, and everybody got to go home for Thanksgiving. So he picks me up in front of the Kailua Kona airport, and I'm so excited. I'm talking about Magic Johnson and Dean Smith and all the players and all the teams. And he just interrupts me. He turns to me and says, "Jim, your dad died." Well, that's another story of how I got to Arkansas, because he retired on a 40,000-acre lake. And it was Thanksgiving, and tickets on airplanes domestically were not available. But I'll talk about that later. So anyway, that's the end of the Maui tournament, and my 4 years going there. It was a wonderful time. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my house in Buriram. I got a green card application completed for Pranam to come to Hawaii. It was a lot of work, a lot of time. And she came with, I had Spencer. I had Spencer since the 5th grade. That's another story about how he learned English in Hawaii, because he was born in Thailand. He's got dual citizenship, American and Thai. But anyway, she decided she had to go back to Thailand. And I didn't really know why, because, one of my mantras here is nobody tells me anything, right? Nam doesn't tell me anything about whatever, school or anything. It just happens, and then I get surprised and work it out. That's the way it is. So she decided to come back here. I went ahead and got the divorce done because we were married, because I didn't want to be married to somebody who wasn't going to be with me, right? I wanted to keep my options open. But at any rate, Spencer was born. I was in a major trial in Kona, a real bastard trial, with two defense attorneys out of Honolulu that were given carte blanche to beat me and my partner Ira Lytle up. So when that finished, I got cancer in the throat. Long story. That's another story. When I finished with my treatment, they wouldn't let me. They said, "You're cool." They did a PET scan. You're gonna live. That was so exciting. But they wouldn't let me fly on an airplane for another 2 months. Excuse me, after I dropped my notes. So I couldn't go see my son, who was already almost 5 years old. I got back there, to make a long story short, there he was. It was December, and I had plans to leave. I had to go somewhere, I forget. My daughter had tickets for something over Christmas, some function, but I forget now. Nam gives me Spencer, the cute little bug that he is. He said, "Here, it's New Year's Eve coming up in a few days. It's Christmas, and I'm going. She's been taking care of for several years, and I couldn't fly, and I couldn't be there for his birth. I had a friend of mine take pictures and stuff, so I did get that, and I was on the phone a lot. So she said, I'm going to go up north and visit the family and have New Year's Eve, have a New Year's Eve function, party and stuff, and you can take care of Spencer." Now that wasn't my plan. So I said, well, um, I'm going back. I'm going back on December 28th. I'm not going to be here for New Year's. And I forget who suggested it, but it came to the conclusion between the two of us that I would take him with me to the United States. He had a U.S. passport. He was born to an American father. He was born in Thailand, so he had a Thai passport. He was global already at the age of 4. So I took him back to Waikiki. I was living in the jungle at the time. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to talk about the house. I eventually came back here to Buriram with Spencer after 3 or 4 years of being in America and going to school. He could speak and read and write English really well. And there's lots of stories there which I'll cover later about his struggles. You take a Thai kid who's 5 years old and doesn't speak any English. Oh, my audience is here and doesn't speak any English and doesn't know how to write English or read English. And in a few years, that's a cement truck. Somebody's going to do some cement work. God bless him. And read English, and he got really good at it really fast. And then he didn't want to speak Thai. He used to speak Thai fluently, but he wouldn't speak Thai in America. No, thank you. So anyway, we went back and hooked up with Nam. My mother died when I was 11, and she was sick for a couple of years. I didn't see her much, and that's another story. I blame my dad for not handling that right. And when I talk about it, maybe you folks out there, when you have a loved one who's ill, that you'll handle it a little bit better than my father did. I still love him, and he didn't mean he meant well with what he did back in the day. So anyway, we came here, and Nam was going to build a new house, and she sold her home in Pathum Thani, which is about 45 minutes outside of Bangkok, where I had stayed for many years. It was 2 stories, 2 floors. And she sold it to the man and woman who she worked for. And they had a company in Pathum Thani, and they sold it and got a bunch of money. They sold it to a Japanese owner. They used to do a detail work on dashboards and stuff for cars, custom work. And Nam was a great artist. She was really a great artist. So we loaded up all the furniture. 18 years she had this place, and you can imagine the amount of stuff she had. We had 2 giant trucks with big, the big plywood sides on it and everything. and we loaded it up. She brought all her friends in and her family, and we loaded that truck up, and we drove up to Buriram. Now, I had already been in a 30-day quarantine with Spencer. When I applied to come back over here during the pandemic, the hotel showed me pictures of the swimming pool, and they had a beautiful grass area and trees outside. And they said, once a day for an hour, you can come out here and walk around and be outside. And I thought, well, okay, I got to get this done so I can be back with Nam, and Spencer can be back with Nam, and we're gonna sell the house and move on. Well, that didn't happen. They wouldn't let us out of the room. Wouldn't let us out of the room. The guy would bring the food. We could order the food over the phone. They had a menu. We'd order the food over the phone. It was all Thai food, and I like Thai food, but 30 days, not so sure. The guy would knock on the door of our room, and we go to open the door to get to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It'd be on the table in the hallway by the door. Nowhere to be seen. The Thai people were so frightened of getting the disease, and there was a lot of propaganda out that it came from us, the foreigners. Of course, I didn't have it. I got my shots. Spencer didn't have it, and we're not going to get it staying in this room for a month. Anyway, spending a month with my son was a real delightful treat. And when we got out, Nam was so happy to see us. It was a great reunion, you can't imagine. And then we were going to go up to Buriram, and we had to spend another 4 weeks in a hotel in quarantine in Buriram. The city had its own quarantine.